The Sons of UCF preview of Temple at UCF continues, and joining us now, Matt Barrie, who will be on the call on ESPN Thursday night. He'll be joined by Louis Riddick and Harry Lyles Jr. Matt, thanks for taking the time. Are you ready for the space game?
You know, it's funny you ask because we were looking at this a couple of weeks ago, and when we found out it was the space game, we all got excited because we know how important those games are to this program in this area. So we are excited. We've seen the uniforms. We know the bounce house can get weird on a Thursday night. So I think everything coming together, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and what are your observations, your thoughts on the uniform, the helmet that sparkles, right?
Oh, the helmet. I just looked at our field producer, Jason Greenberg, actually just sent me a picture of the helmet. I kind of zoomed in on it to have a look at it. I mean, the detail that goes into these uniforms, I don't think people appreciate what actually goes into making this space game go off. And the fact that I read something that's like the sixth darkest version of black, something to that effect that went into the helmet. I mean, the detail and how they go about this is just really remarkable. I cannot wait to see these things in high def on national TV as they go home to the viewer.
And the work on next year's space game uniforms will start Friday, following the game with Temple on Thursday.
Yeah, it's impressive. The designs that go into it. I think this is the sixth one. And every year, I think they get better and better and more detailed, and it's going to be fun. They're going to look good under the lights. I can tell you that.
Matt, UCF comes into this game 4-1. Obviously, you've had a chance to watch some film, scout UCF a little bit. What have you seen so far in the games you've watched of UCF?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say, they're going to want that Louisville game back. Based on what Louisville's done and who UCF is now, I don't think there's any question UCF's a better football team than Louisville. And I hope that that's not one of those games towards the end of the season that trips them up on their way to big things. I'll say with John Rice Plumlee, it's been interesting because it's all there, right? But he's just started a little bit slow in some games. I know the second half against SMU last week, he finally got it going. But that first half, it just seemed like they were stuck in mud. I think there was one field goal, 3 or 4 punts in their first 5 possessions. And so you're kind of waiting for everything to come together. Now, having said that, the fact that the offense hasn't really hit its potential yet, you wonder if the second half against SMU was kind of a harbinger of things to come tomorrow night against Temple. But the defense, everybody talks offense with Gus. The defense is among the best in the country. The offense, when it clicks and everybody gets on the same page, it's going to be something to see. So, I do this every week when I call games and we look at the teams that we cover, and you kind of find 1 or 2 things that you like about them. There really isn't much we don't like and I don't like about UCF. If we can just get that offense, if they can just get that offense going a little bit more to where you're used to seeing them hitting on all cylinders, the eye candy with Gus, all of that. This is a fun football team, and I really believe it's just the beginning. We're at the halfway point of the season. You'll know, and we typically know at the halfway point, you kind of separate themselves from the guys that surprised early on in the season that turn out to be a little bit of a pretender, and then the ones that had quick starts that you can ID as legitimate contenders, and I think UCF qualifies for that.
For being fair, JRP, he took 2 years off playing quarterback, right? His first year really back playing quarterback. You've seen his style. His passing game is still evolving, right? I think he's improving a little bit here and there, but he's such a dynamic athlete, such a dynamic runner. Can UCF win with him at quarterback with that kind of style of play, a developing quarterback, but somebody who's really good from outside the pocket and can run the football?
Yeah, because look, when this transfer happened, when he left Ole Miss to come here to UCF, the first thing that I said is this is a perfect marriage between Gus and a quarterback. I mean, when he went to the national, I think it was Nick Marshall was the quarterback at Auburn that went to the BCS championship. This guy was a converted defensive back that ended up playing quarterback. He wasn't a great thrower. What he could do is he could run the offense within the confines of what Gus wants to do with it, and he kept the thing moving. Look, Plumlee's got an arm. You just said it. He's an athlete. He's got that baseball, wing it down the field. You see some throws that he puts it in a spot that only his guys can catch. He had one last week to Baker that was on the sidelines. It was absolutely perfect. But with Gus, it's almost quarterback, point guard, make everything work. And I do believe that he's got the athletic ability and the skill set to kind of make every piston in this engine run.
Earlier, you mentioned contenders, pretenders. Houston has stumbled out of the gate. They are preseason favorite to win the American. This is wide open, and UCF could seize this.
Look, the American, what we've seen over the past few years, this is a good league. I mean, there are a lot of good football teams in this league. And, yeah, Houston and Dana Holgerson with Clayton Tune coming back, Nathaniel Dell, that was one of those schools that we looked at and said, okay, now there's that group of 5 team to watch, but they just haven't been able to get it done. They had the dramatic win a week ago where they had to come back and take that one from Memphis, I believe. But look, there's so much football left to play. And typically what you see in this league now more than ever, and we know the 4 teams that are headed out to the Big 12, but what you see from this conference year in and year out, typically around mid-October to end of October, there are a couple of teams that start separating themselves into the national conversation. And I think with UCF being on national television tomorrow night, all to themselves. I know they had the Wednesday game last week. It was kind of a weird situation where not a lot of people understood that there was football on a Wednesday. It's going to start happening quickly. And that's why I started this with they're going to want that Louisville game back. Because, if they go 4-1, they go 5-0, 6-0 after tomorrow night, if they get the win, then you're really talking about a little bit of momentum. But it's all there for them. And if we're looking big picture outside of this year, what's Gus trying to do, right? He's trying to take a program and move it into a Power 5 league in the Big 12. And there's so much that goes along with that. And I believe with the recruiting, I know they got a big recruit the other day that they're excited about, with just a couple of things here and there. This, to me, is a hidden gem of college football with a place that could sustain success and be talked about year in and year out.
You mentioned that transition. What are some of the biggest areas that you see on UCF that you think they need to recruit for to make that transition? We talk about it week in and week out. Really play along the lines, recruiting those big bodies on the lines as they move into the Big 12.
Yeah, that's all it is. I've seen a couple of transitions in the conferences prior to ESPN from about 2008 to 2013. I worked at the NBC station in the DFW television market. So along with the Cowboys and the Mavericks and the Rangers and all the pro sports, there was Gary Patterson there at TCU building that thing into a national power, but he was doing it in the Mountain West. And the big knock on TCU, the Andy Dalton team, I think Tank Carter was on the team. They went to the Rose Bowl and beat Wisconsin. The big knock on them year in and year out, it's like, well, yeah, it's the Mountain West. You have to get up for Utah, who was in the Mountain West at the time, and maybe one other game. And people are like, well, no, wait a second. TCU just went and won the Rose Bowl. Well, yeah, it was one game with a month to prepare and everyone to get healthy. So what Gary Patterson told me when they went into the Big 12, they struggled at first. After that first year, they struggled. And why was it? Well, it's because, 1 to 22, TCU could compete with anyone in the Big 12. But then it was the depth. And it was going from playing Oklahoma, and then the next week playing Texas, and then the next week playing Baylor, and the next week playing Oklahoma State. It's week in, week out depth. And so for UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU to get to the point where you're going to be able to sustain that success week in and week out, you need depth. You're too deep. Your number 2 needs to be just about as good as your number 1. And then your number 3 needs to be able to be a number 2 should the number 2 go out. That's the difference with some of these Power 5s and these Group of 5s. Yeah, starting 11 could probably compete with anybody. Who's behind them? And I think that's where you'll see Gus get this thing at some of those other schools I was talking about, where you get your depth to where you're now Power 5 depth. And it's not a knock on some of these schools playing in the American or some of these other conferences. It's a reality. Depth in Power 5 leagues it's better. And so he's going to start filling the roster with that. I think for schools like UCF and Houston and Cincinnati and BYU, I think a transfer portal is amazing because you can go pluck a kid here and there that maybe didn't get an opportunity at a Florida or Florida State, especially in this market, come back home to this area, play right away, and then build depth that way. So I would say that's probably the biggest need.
Matt, you've been covering college football a long time. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Gus yet in the lead up to this game, but where do you see Gus different than the Gus we saw at Auburn? Can you see a change in kind of the way he's coaching and leading this program versus Auburn?
Yeah, he's enjoying himself. I mean, that's really the long of it. I mean, look at what's happening right now with Brian Harsin, right? They had an attempted coup on him in the offseason after one season. And now every week you talk to someone, it's like, well, that job's open. Well, it's not open. There's still a head coach that's going to be coaching there Saturday. Well, if he loses this week, he's going to get fired. Well, how many weeks have we heard that? And that's a reality at Auburn and some of those schools at the SEC and some of these blue bloods around the country. That's just the reality of it. Each and every week, there's sometimes if you don't feel like give the full support. Now, Gus was there for a long time. He had a lot of success there, but still it wasn't good enough. And I believe I was shocked, by the way, that he got right back into college football. Shocked. He had enough money that Auburn paid him to go away, to go sit at home and enjoy the paycheck and just kind of decompress a little bit. But with what he had here, I think he saw what a lot of us see. This place is a diamond in the rough. And I think that he knew that he could come here, build a program without having the finger pointed at him every single week to beat Alabama, to beat LSU, to win a national championship. It's just one thing after another. I think he's having a hell of a time here. And and a lot of coaches are very aspirational people. I also believe that he loves the challenge of taking this program from where it is now to where it's headed into the Big 12. And I think all of that stuff has reinvigorated him into a ball coach that's just really enjoying himself.
Let's go on the field for the game. When you look at the matchup, UCF and Temple, where do you see advantages on either side? Is there an advantage either team has over the other?
You look, I think the skill position players for UCF are just better. Baker's just better. Hudson's better. O'Keefe's better. These guys are just better than what Temple has from a skill position. And Temple's young. They're inexperienced. Bowser's a big physical back. The quarterback. I mean, they're starting a true freshman and A.J. Warner, Kurt Warner's kids. You guys know that story by now. And so just in terms of experience and explosiveness, it goes to UCF without question. But I will say what Temple does bring to the game tomorrow night, their defense is good. Their defense is fast. Their defense is physical. And early on, look, you're going to see an inspired Temple team coming off a bye week. They feel a little bit healthier than they've been. EJ, the quarterback's gotten a little bit more repetition, a little more confidence in his ability. But if you're just going best on best, the matchup to watch tomorrow night that we're going to focus on a lot is this UCF offense versus a really, really talented defense. Because conversely, we talked about how good UCF's defense is. I think it's a mismatch with Temple's offense. I really do. They haven't had a running back pop out yet to establish himself as the true number one guy. But to me, good on good come kick tomorrow night will be that Temple defense lined up against this talented offense.
What have you seen of Temple's quarterback, the true freshman, E.J. Warner? Shades of dad?
Like the release is remarkable. We did a still in the way that they kind of like we'll post it on social media. We'll have it during the broadcast tomorrow night. The release and how he walks and carries himself is remarkable. He's really small. I think he's about 6 feet, maybe 175, 80 pounds. So he's a little kid. I don't mean that. He's a little guy. And he's a true freshman, and he's learning. Here's what I know about him. He's football acumen in terms of understanding the game is senior quarterback level. And he just gets it. They're not worried about overloading him. What they're worried about is in-game line checks, in-game progressions, making the reads, making the timely throw, getting the ball out on time. And so he's a student of the game, and he's really going to be fun to watch to develop. You see glimpses every once in a while of like, aha, there it is. And then there's other times where he throws 3 interceptions, and you're like, that's a true freshman mistake. But he's going to be fun to watch. It's not for a lack of knowledge of the game. I just think he's got to grow into himself and grow into college football.
Temple's had success in the American, but has been down of late. What do you think of the job early going that head coach Stan Drayton has done?
Look, Stan waited 29 years for his opportunity to get a head coaching job, and it's worth every bit of his fight. And he's going to keep going. He's going to keep swinging. He's the perfect person for this job because he'll tell you, I had so many doors closed in my face. I think that I'm a really good football coach. I think I'm a smart football coach. I think I know what I'm talking about. And he had to wait this long. And so what does that do? Well, over the course of time, that's going to breed a chip on your shoulder. It's going to breed a blue collar mentality of, well, why did it take me so long to get to this point? He'll instill that in his team. Philadelphia is a very, very hard-nosed sports town that requires a special kind of athlete to be able to come in there and have what it takes to compete. That's Stan Drayton. It's a guy who never gave up on his head coaching dream. It's a guy who believes that he belongs as a head coach. He's won national championships at Ohio State. He's coached at Texas. This guy's seen just about everything in college football except the big chair. He's going to be fun to watch. Look, just from spending time with him this week, I can tell you, if the message he was speaking with us is the same message he's telling his players and his coaches and families of recruits, it's only a matter of time to where we see the template that you were alluding to that was good under the Matt Rule era.
In the world of football, there may be no smarter man than one Louis Riddick, your partner on the call for Thursday night. What's it like to sit next to him every Thursday and kind of just listen to him talk and share his knowledge about football?
You know, it's funny with Louis. Louis loves to talk, and he'll tell you that. He's like, man, you got to shut me up because I'm just going to keep talking. I'm going to keep talking. And we'll go into these coaches' meetings, and he just watches an obscene amount of film, just every single week. And we were sitting the other day with the Temple defensive coordinator, and he pointed out something that he watched on one of their defensive ends about this move, this ghost move. And he's like, you know, I would bet, just from watching cut-ups of this kid, I'd bet he watches a lot of Von Miller tape. And the defensive coordinator's eyes light up. He's like, yeah, you caught that. Mm. And that's the kind of stuff that he sees that no one else sees. So it's been a lot of fun talking ball with him throughout the week. But then within a game, when we're calling a game, he'll see something that a lot of people don't. And he understands, like he'll West Virginia, we've had them a couple times now, and he would look at a couple of, just being an NFL guy and working on the draft, he'll look at body type of some players. And he'll say, see that kid right there, 6'3", 210. He's got an NFL build. Watch him grow into this. Watch him do that. And it really is fun. Like, you learn so much from just watching a game with him. And when you're in these coaches meetings, it's almost like you're with player evaluator and coaches, and we're just kind of sitting back and listening to them talk. He's been great for Thursday Night Football.
I'm also curious about your game prep. You don't, obviously you do college stuff on Saturdays, right? You're in the studio all day Saturday. You do Sports Center throughout the week. Yeah. When or how do you find time? What does your game prep look like?
That's a great question, because I flew in here Wednesday night. I did Sports Center today, so I got off air at 2:00, hopped on a 3:30 flight, landed at about 6:30. Anytime that I get flights, big into watching stuff on flights. I use that time where I'm just sitting still to be able to just read notes, look at my board, find little nuggets and stories that maybe someone else had missed. And then honestly, during commercial breaks, during Sports Center, I've got my game board, and during a break, I'll turn to the side and I'll just make notes and I'll look around, and I just the way that my schedule works: Sports Center Tuesday, Sports Center Wednesday, travel, call the game Thursday, fly back Friday morning, do studio Friday night for the Friday night game with Jesse and Joey, and then all day Saturday. You kind of get really good at those 10 to 15 minutes here and there where you can kind of just pour it in. And then tomorrow morning we'll have a production call before the game, and then I'll do some last minute looking and poking and see if there's anything I missed. But I've learned how to budget time with the schedule, and it's funny. People ask, well, would you just want to do games? It would bore me to tears, because you have a whole week to do one thing. I wouldn't know what it's like not having 7 things to do in a 5-day period.
That was fascinating too, man. What do you guys do on Saturday? You're in the studio for 12, 16 hours. There are games everywhere. How do you keep track of all that stuff? There's just a massive amount of TVs. Take us behind the scenes on a Saturday.
Yeah, so we have, 8. We have 10 games going at once. So we have this big 8-pack wheeled. It's a big thing with 8 TVs in it, and it's got wheels. And so we wheel it in front of us. We've got a big screen monitor. There we put the big game during that particular window, and then we have the game that's on ESPN that's in our ear, that's on our floor monitor. And then we sit and we have this set with 3 chairs, coffee table. I mean, it looks like a living room. And so we sit there all day, except when we're up doing half times. And then typically at around, I'd say 10 o'clock is when we start getting into the college football final rundown. Then we do the Pac-12 or the late game, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. We do that halftime at around midnight. And then that's when we start and get going on college football final. So we get there at about 11:30 a.m. on Saturdays, and we usually leave at around 2:30 a.m. Sunday.
That is one long day.
We're watching probably 30-plus games all over the place and just trying to keep track of everything going on.
Well, we'll end with this. You've been bullish about UCF. UCF's rise, of course, comes amid struggles for Florida, Florida State, Miami. How do you see the state of college football in the state of Florida right now?
It was a big topic in the offseason, and it was a big topic, one, because we were wondering if Mike Norvell in year 3 was going to be able to turn the corner. It appears that he has somewhat. Now, Clemson's a different corner you got to turn. We'll see what happens there and where they kind of match up with them on Saturday. I do believe in Billy Napier, and I really believe in Mario Cristobal. And when you look at the turnover in this state, think about it, that Gus and Norvell were kind of the old hats in football here because Florida and Miami just had their turnover. And, you know, they're all going about it a little bit differently. Billy is a offensive guy, came in from Louisiana, has the offensive pedigree and kind of splashy with what he wants to do and score. Whereas Mario, he's a Miami guy. He played his college football there. They wanted to bring what the U was back home. And so I think if I had to piece together who pops first, there's still something to me about Miami that I think is a couple of years away from being really, really good again. And Florida, Georgia's going to be there for a long time. That SEC East is so strong. But if he gets some guys to go with Anthony Richardson, if he decides to come back, it's going to be healthy again. Put it that way. Look, the fact – I say this all the time. When Miami and Florida State are good, it's good for college football. Those are 2 teams in the early 90s that were just so dominant. We need them back. You throw in UCF, which is why I always say this is a diamond in the rough, because if some of those players at some of those schools we're talking about aren't happy there, well, guess what? They're coming home. I'm telling you, in about 5 years, watch where all 4 of these programs are. I wouldn't be shocked if all 4 were consistently flirting with top 20 rankings year in and year out.
Good stuff. Matt Barrie, you'll find him on ESPN Thursday night on the Temple Call, along with Louis Riddick and Harry Lyles Jr. Enjoy the bounce house on a Thursday night.
I can't wait, guys. Good talking to you, and good luck tomorrow night.
Thanks much.